What's up guys, Sub-Zero here, and welcome to my tier list for patch 12.18. This is a really interesting patch, shook up the meta a lot, nerfed a lot of the stronger comps, like Cannoneer or Aphelios I don't think is even like that good anymore unless you really high roll it. Xayah's weaker, but you know, still definitely strong. Dragonmancer Nunu is not going to be on this tier list at all, though I think you can still play it if you really high roll it. And then other comps, like this one that we're about to go into, mages are way stronger. So really interesting patch, a lot more flexible, a lot more stuff that you can play. Let's get right into it with the first comp, which is just vertical mages, 7 mages with Nomsy carry. Important thing about this comp, you only really want to play this version of the comp with Nomsy carry if Nomsy's mage. You can check that early on in the game by just going over your Vladimir if you put Vladimir in. You can look at the mage trait, and if you see Heimerdinger plus Nomsy, then you know Nomsy's a mage. You can also check if it's Cannoneer by hovering over Senna, looking at the Cannoneer trait and seeing if Nomsy plus Tristana appear, and if it's neither of those, then you know it's Evoker. So that's something you should get in the habit of doing every game, especially if you're looking to play this comp, because it only really works with Nomsy as carry if you want to play this, 7 mage Nomsy variation. That being said, pretty straightforward comp. It's just 7 mages and you throw in a Skarner as a bruiser, and it also gets an Astral for you. Pretty straightforward that you can play this comp from an Astral opener, so Vlad, Skarner, Lux, or, you don't have to have Lux immediately. You can just play Nidalee and eventually find the Lux, and then your level 4 is ideally a mage. Best case, it's Silas so that you can get bruiser in, but you can always play like a Lilia or even a Talia is totally fine. Lux can be your early game item holder, really, really straightforward in that way, and then you can just move items to Nomsy later. Nomsy is really strong. I don't know if you guys saw, but I had a video I posted a couple of days ago where I played Nomsy vertical mages, and Nomsy 1 carried me all the way until like late stage 4. Actually, like absolutely insane how much damage that this unit puts out with vertical mages in. So if you ever end up in a situation where you get an early Nomsy, you have AP items, you get like +1 mage maybe from augments, definitely look at playing this comp. It is very, very strong. And the nice thing, if you get +1 mage, then you can start cutting some of the more useless mages, because late game, of course, you are playing like a Vladimir and Lilia, which are like kind of worthless units. So if you get +1 mage, then you can start cutting these units out. If you get a mage spat, some of the best holders for it, and I'll get into this a little bit later, Xayah is an incredible mage spat holder, so I would love to cut Lilia for a mage spat Xayah. Bard is also very good, and Soraka is also another very good holder of Mage Spat, so those guys are really good as well. Also, if you end up with a Mage Spat, you can always transition out of this later, which is what I did on the game that was on my channel. You can get rid of Nomsy and put in potentially like a Mage Aurelian Soul as your carry. So something like this, and then get out of Lilia and just, like start putting in like better units basically. Like you get out of a lot of these units really if you have +1 mage. You can get out of Skarner and then just have something like this with the +1 mage Aurelian Soul, and then start adding better units. Throw in a random Yasuo, throw in a random Bard, that kind of stuff. You can get bruiser in if you really want to, but late game it's not super relevant. But really just like start putting in 5 costs and then play around 2-star mage cap a soul, and it'll be really good. So yeah, that is vertical mages, in my opinion, the 5th best comp. On to number 4, we have this really interesting Seraphine comp that came out. It came out of China like right at the end of last patch, and people have been playing it this patch and doing quite well with it. So I thought it'd be interesting to highlight it. Really important in the item priority. Seraphine items are the most important. Morello's is so good on her. You say, wait, her spell doesn't actually like do damage, it just lets other people do damage. That means when other people do damage on their attacks, they get the healing reduction and the burn off of Morello's. So that is really good. So you just you make your entire team apply Morello's with autos, which is insane, especially on a unit like Graves, where his auto attack is actually 4 bullets, so all 4 of them apply it. And Pantheon's ult, which is going to apply it with every single tick of his ult. Each of these all count as individual attacks, so really good with Seraphine ult. So Seraphine items are most important, and second is just getting some Zeeks on Zeri, because she applies it so well onto Graves and Xayah in the backline. You can even put Pantheon here if you really want to, but in general, I think this formation looks really good. Graves just does really well with attack speed, especially with Cannoneer. It scales with the more attacks you can do, so attack speed there is really good. And then Xayah as well scales really well with attack speed because of Whispers, because every time she attacks, she's getting bonus AD, bonus AP, so she can stack that up faster with a bunch of Zeeks. So Zeeks is really good. And then last priority is Graves items. You really want an Edge of Night, and after that, Healing is really good, and then after that, this can be a damage item, or just like Titan's Resolve is, totally fine as another tankiness item. Outside of that, I mean, you're playing Zac so that you can finish off the Lagoon synergy just to farm some extra items and stuff. Rakan as a Guardian for better frontline. And then also Yasuo caps out the comp at level 8, so you can get another warrior, and also Yasuo is just a really good unit. And Rakan also gives Mystic with Seraphine, which is really nice. But yeah, another really important thing about this comp is that Seraphine 3 is really, really necessary. You really want to oftentimes roll a lot at 7 with this comp to hit your Graves, Pantheon, and multiple Seraphines, and then eventually hit Seraphine 3. The jump, as you can see here, from Seraphine 2 to Seraphine 3 is huge. The shield amount goes up by 80, but the big thing, the damage per attack goes from 35 to 100? Like, what? Seraphine 3 means you can very often go first or second with this board. If you're playing with Seraphine 2, you're probably playing for fourth. So that is something really important, is that this comp really revolves around Seraphine 3, which makes it difficult to hit if there's a lot of Lagoon players in your lobby, so that's something to think about as well. Like if there's multiple Lagoon players that are holding Seraphines, then it's a bit harder to actually play around Seraphine, so that's something to consider as well. So yeah, really, really interesting comp. You just sort of like play around Lagoon and Cannoneer early. You can use Senna as a replacement for Graves, as a replacement for Pantheon. You can always play like Sylas as frontline. You can potentially, instead of Zac, play like Malphite. It's a pretty... You can... In general, you want to just sort of like play a flex strong early game and then get into this a little bit later. So it's a bit awkward. There's not really a very straightforward transition into this comp, but I think if you can just play a really straightforward early game with just like AP items on someone... like a really good carrier is Xayah, because she holds the Morellos so well. So you can have Xayah hold the Morellos in this stuff early game, and then pivot to Seraphine later, once you hit Seraphine, of course, and then also like the Graves and the Pantheon. But yeah, stabilizes really hard around like Seraphine 2 plus a lot of these guys, like Seraphine 2, Seri 2 plus like Graves 1, Pantheon 1. And then, yeah, like I was saying, hitting Seraphine 3, really, really important. And like I said, Seraphine items first, then like Zeke's, maybe 2, and then Graves items. But Seraphine items are the most important with this comp, and like Graves items really don't matter. Edge of Night is important, but outside of that, like these two don't matter. Like you can win games with a 1-star Graves. So yeah, really, really interesting and fun comp there. So definitely try it out. All right, next comp, and I was talking about this before, is just Lagoon. This is vertical 6 Lagoon. I think this is the best way to play Lagoon, where you play around Lagoons. You fit some mages in. In this case, we're playing 4 mages because we really want to play Sylas plus Zoe. But you can always play different variations of this. If you have +1 mage, then this is really nice. You can get 5 mage in for free. But in other situations, you can start cutting units, which I'll talk about in a sec. But you play 6 Lagoon using Sohm, Malphite, Talia, and Nyla. If you don't have any items for Nyla, completely fine to cut Nyla for Seraphine, because she's going to get Evoker in for your Xayah. Xayah is really, really nice in this comp because of the synergy with Sylas for Whispers, and also she's just kind of a broken unit, honestly, late game. But in most cases, you'll want to duo carry Nyla here. The other thing is, if you have a mage spat, like I was saying, it's really, really good. And it should always, always, always go on Xayah. She is an absolutely insane mage spat holder. So absolutely, absolutely do this. And you can also just play a level 7 version in this comp before you have Zoe. Just play like this, and it looks really, really nice. You get your bruisers in. Ideally, you stack up a ton of Lagoon stacks and get some extra items late game, duplicators if you get super, super late game. So this can be a really strong level 7 board. These are the preferred Sohm items. Blue buff, because Sohm is a really low mana cost, only 40. So blue buff is always optimal on them. Morellos, because all of the different like shots are going across like the entire board, and the big tide blossoms, the big spouts that come out, those also are AoE. So Sohm hits a lot of units, and then JG is a good strong last item just to deal some extra damage, especially also because you have so much AP already off of Lagoon. You get +30 here, so having a JG, the crit scales with the extra AP. So this is really strong. But yeah, I'm sure you guys have been seeing this comp on the ladder a lot. Oh yeah, and then Zoe can just take whatever other items you have. Shoju's just a great item on Zoe because she has a huge mana pool. And then sort of like AD crit items on Nyla. Yeah, really just crit and damage items in general. Something like this is completely fine. Though in this situation, you don't have Assassin in, so IE is actually not that important. If you have, like a 3-item Nyla, you can think about, instead of playing Zoe, playing like another Assassin. something like a Kiana, or if you can even get like an assassin spat late game, then it can be really nice. So like actually IE is actually not that high priority here. So because in most cases you're not actually playing assassin with Nyla, so her spells aren't going to crit because you won't have assassin in. So in this lineup, something like this is fine, and then just like damage item last item, you can throw in like a Hodge or something. Really just any damage items on her. She's kind of interesting in that way. But yeah, this is, I would say, a very, very strong comp. Really, really straightforward as well. Similar to the last one, you just kind of play it out of a Lagoon opener. You get some Lagoon units in, have a Xayah hold these items early, and then eventually transition them over to Sohm. Ideally, like I said, like +1 Mage makes this comp so good. +1 Lagoon means you can cut Malphite for something better, but you do kind of want to have a Bruiser in just to have a little bit more of a tanky front line. So it's not like instead of Malphite, you play Jax. It's not like that huge, but it's, not the worst. +1 Lagoon also means you could cut Talia. So if you have like +1 Lagoon instead of playing Talia, you can just play these 3 mages and then play like an assassin, like Kiana. So that's something that you can do as well with like +1 Lagoon. So that's something to think about as well. But yeah, really, really straightforward. Like I think this is a good beginner's comp because you just collect the Lagoon units and then end up playing around Sohm late game, build these items, and you'll do well. So really, really straightforward. If you're new to the game or you're like lower elo, I think this is a really good comp to play because you can play Lagoon early game and then you move to late game and you're still playing Lagoon. Like there's item holders that make a lot of sense, like Xayah, and like Xayah can item hold, Talia can item hold. Yeah, really, really straightforward and quite strong comp. So yeah, that is, in my opinion, the third best comp. Let's move on to number 2. It is a comp that was very strong last patch and is still, even after nerfs, very strong this patch. It's Ragewing Xayah. I mean, if you just look at the units in this comp, I think it's always going to be meta unless there's some huge nerfs to it because of the amount of CC in this comp. If you assemble this level 8 board, you have Hecarim CC, Shyvana CC, Jace CC, and Bard CC, and also Rakan CC to some degree. You will find a lot of fights, especially like if you're this comp and you are fighting, say, this comp where they group up in the middle. Jace is going to ult, knock up the entire enemy team, or I guess it's just like a stun basically because there isn't really knock up in TFT. But he's going to stun the entire team. Then Hecarim's going to ult, stun the entire team. Shyvana is going to come down, stun the entire team, and like somewhere in there, Bard is going to stun the entire enemy team. Like sometimes I have played this board. If you had everything like Jace 2, Hecarim 2, and then like Bard 1, Shyvana 1, you play against this board at like 5-1, and they don't get to play the game at all. Like they just are CC'd for like 4 or 5 seconds straight, and then the fight's just over because Xayah's killed everyone at that point. So this is, yeah, still a very strong, very, very strong comp because of all that CC. The biggest difficulty with this comp is like, what do you play before you hit this board? And it's kind of interesting because like the AP items, you'd like to build AP items if you have a lot of gold and you're pretty likely you're gonna hit Shyvana. You'd like to build AP items for her. Those can always get carried on Jace. You can put like Morellas and Archangels on Jace and then eventually move them over to Shyvana. Like say you are rolling down and you don't hit Shyvana, what do you actually do here? There's a few options here. There's actually a lot, and it's really important to be flexible with this comp because you can miss Shyvana sometimes. So there's a few things that you can play. One is Idis. Idis is a really strong frontline here. Gets the Guardian synergy with Rakan, and if it's a good Shimmer Scale item, then you can do very well. The only Shimmer Scale items I would not be happy to play with this comp are Goldmancer's Staff. It's just, you don't really care about the extra AP here, and then a late Determined Investor. If you get Determined Investor like stage 3 or like Turbo High Roll stage 2, and you can evolve it into Diamond Hands, then Idis becomes really good. But if you find an Idis at like 4-2, 4-5, something like that, then you're not going to transform Determined Investor into Diamond Hands anytime soon. It's probably not worth playing Idis. Of course, Draven's Axe and Gambler's Blade are good Xayah items. Needlessly Big Gem is also very, very strong because you can just get like a free augment, a free Ascension augment, so this is really good. And then Mogul's Mail is also a really, really strong frontline item. So yeah, basically everything but Goldmancers and then a late Determined Investor I think are good items with Idis. So you can play Idis frontline. You can even play Zippy frontline, which is actually interesting because I know there's some Zippy haters out there, but Zippy got buffed this patch, and honestly Zippy has been good in this comp for a long time. Zippy is incredibly strong if you end up in a situation where you have Guild Emblem. So like say you don't have this Renans here, but you have Guild Emblem on Xayah, Zippy becomes incredibly good in this comp. If you can fit 8 Guild in, so like instead of this setup, because you don't need 3 Ragewing anymore, like instead of Rakan here, you can play Sejuani and play 8 Guild here. This board is insane. So if you have +1 Guild, off the emblem and you have this on Xayah, like, this is a ridiculously strong board. Definitely look to play this board. So it's a very flexible comp, right? You can play the Zippy frontline, you can play the Idas frontline. You know, if you hit Terra and you don't have Shyvana yet, Terra can be, you know, totally fine. And you put Terra here. You can put Xayah on one of the hexes if you want, because the hexes are going to be here and here. And then you have Terra up here. You can also just corner Xayah and then have like Hecarim here. Totally fine. Yeah, so this is also like a totally good frontline. So you can really play whatever dragon you hit. Idas, Terra, Zippy, or Shyvana. You know, I'm not the biggest fan of like Shoyu and Siphon, so I wouldn't really play around them. But like this can be really strong. And then eventually, you know, the second you find Shyvana, you just say, okay, goodbye Terra, put in Shyvana, and then ideally you have a Rakan sitting on the wings, and you can fit that in here over Sejuani usually, but sometimes over Bard. It's actually surprising to me that like sometimes your board is actually stronger if it just looks like this, plus Rakan instead of Bard. Just because having Cavalier in provides a lot of frontline, especially if you have like a Cavalier Spat and you have it on Shyvana. That extra resists, I mean, 45 armor and 45 MR as opposed to 30 is a pretty big difference. So sometimes, especially if also like you're low on frontline, you have like Hecarim 1-star, Rakan 1-star, but you have like Sejuani 2 and like maybe Jace 1-star as well. You can play Sejuani instead of Bard. It's interesting. The other thing is Xayah, you really don't want her to get CC'd. So I oftentimes will solo corner her here. I won't put Twitch here because then this will attract things like Bard ults and Shyvana ults. So I'll, you know, do positioning like this if I have Bard instead of Sejuani, which is often like my late game comp. If I have like this, I won't do something like this because then Xayah's gonna get ulted. I'll do something more like this, or even like this to like try to make the enemy Shyvana dive bomb my backline if, you know, we're in a mirror matchup. So this is something that's quite important. The other thing that's really important in this comp is not getting Xyra'd. So you can do something like this. So that Xayah will not ult your backline, because Xayah is always going to ult the row with the most units on them. So if you do something like this, you can basically guarantee Xayah never gets ulted. The last thing you have to dodge as well is Nyla. So that's really just putting Xayah on the opposite side of Nyla, which is not easy because, you know, they can switch last second. It can be difficult, but just try to dodge Nylas. If people have their Nyla on the left side and they're not moving it, then just put Xayah on the right side. In most scenarios, she won't die immediately because of the healing from Ragewing, but she can definitely die to like a fully itemized Nyla. So that's something to watch out for as well. All right, so those are our top 4 comps, 5th through 4th. Now time for our final comp, in my opinion, the strongest comp. And I'm going back to showing you guys a capped dragons board here. Now, why am I doing this? Because technically, this is always the strongest comp in the game. This will always be the strongest comp in the game unless there's something egregiously broken. I'm showing you guys this comp again this patch because I think this is a really slow meta, a meta where most people are opening with Astrals or opening with Lagoon units. Like most games, I would try to go for an Astral opener or a Lagoon opener just because the game is so slow right now. People are not playing really aggressive, like pushing levels, early boards. They're just trying to make as much gold as possible and then go fast level 8, fast level 9 and play a board like this. Especially if you can play like a strong Astral opener, hit some 2-star units, and then win streak and play this board, it's over. That's the other thing about it being a slow meta is that makes it easier for you to win streak. So you can play this board late game as well. If you just win streak, you know, you go on a 10 fight win streak, you generate so much extra gold and you can play this comp late game. I would say this is the most capped board in the game. It's 4 dragons with an Aushin Shyvana duo carry. Terra is our front line, and then Idas is just here as emotional support. You know, whatever the Shimmer Scale item, you can sort of like throw it on. I guess best case scenarios, it's something like Gem or an evolved Diamond Hands, and you can put that on Shyvana or Terra. Something like a Gold Dancer Staff is fine as well if you have a lot of gold. This is, you know, in general, Aushin's best in slot. Shojin to make them cast more. Archangel is because, you know, usually you're casting very late into the fight. And a Hextech Gunblade for healing. This is Shyvana's best in slot. You can, and I've said this before, this is important, if you have something like Ascension, where Aushin, you want them to be casting later in the fight, you can always not play a Shojin here and just do something like this. This is completely fine. You don't need a mana item for Aushin as long as you have a good enough front line. If you have a crummy front line, if this is all 1-starred, then sometimes they'll die before Aushin cast, and then you'll just get 10-0'd. So you really need a good front line to be able to go no mana item Aushin, but this is totally something that you can do, is just play no mana item on Aushin if you have a good enough front line. And then the Rakan Bard combination here is really nice, just to get Mystic in, get Guardian in, get Ragewing in. There are other things that you can put in here, though. The other really straightforward package is Yasuo plus Lee Sin, because Lee Sin will activate your 4th Tempest stack for, or, give you your 4th Tempest for Ao Shin, and then also give you Dragomancer for Yasuo. So something like this is reasonable. You could even do something like this. It's just a level 8 board. Like this is totally fine. You can also, if you're just super balling and you have a bunch of money, like say you're rolling at level 9 for this stuff and you hit, like Soraka 2, Bard 2, I'm not upset about, this being a board. Though I guess if you're level 9 at this point, then you'd also fit in the Rakan just so that you have, all the synergies that you want. But, like if you just hit some 2-star units, like this can absolutely just be your board. Like, I know it doesn't activate all the perfect synergies and make you really happy, but like the Yasuo 2, especially if you have like anything on him, like a blue buff or something, is so strong. Soraka 2 as well, Bard 2. You can totally play this board if you hit everything. It doesn't get, the most efficient synergies in, but it's very strong. And like these are the dragons that you really care about. You kind of just fit Idas in for fun because, you can fit in a 4th dragon for only 1 team slot. But like there's not really other dragons that I'm really interested in playing. I don't care that much about Shoyu, kind of just a trait bot to give you Mystic, but it's okay. Deja, like my damage items are already going here, so what do I care? Tyrant Swain is just not really that much of a unit. Siphon doesn't really do that much either. Asol, you don't really want like 3 damage dealers on your team that are dragons because then you're just running out of slots. So like, you see, and like Nomsy, like not really, Zippy, no. So these are the dragons you really care about. But if you have an Idas too, definitely play it. So yeah, that's this comp. So yeah, that'll do it for my top comps of this patch. Like I said, it's a pretty slow patch in general. And as you can see, it's a bit more AP heavy. Like I highlighted basically 4 AP comps and 1 AD comp. I feel like Cannoneers are less out of the meta though now, so like AD is not as strong, but I mean, Xayah is still a very, very strong option. I did put her second here, so if you hit Xayah, definitely play it. If you hit early guild stuff or you hit good Xayah items, definitely play for Xayah, but in general, I think you can actually do a good job of playing AP Flex this patch and just, flexing around Sohm, Seraphine, and Zippy, or not Zippy, Nomsy, and then also just this late game dragon board. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any other questions about the patch, let me know down below. If you want me to do a guide on any of these comps, also let me know. Definitely want to do more guide videos. So yeah, just tell me if there's any of these that you're interested in. But yep, hope you guys enjoyed. Oh, and please check out the link to my Twitch in the description down below. I go live a few days a week, usually Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, around 7 p.m. Central Time. So yeah, check it out, and I will catch you guys next time. Bye.